Now we're super calling the meeting to order at 7:01. Leslie, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, if I mispronounce your name, I'm sorry. Chris Chabot,
Aye. Here.
Andrew,
Here.
Mary McBride. Here. Paul
What trainings have been taken?
McDougal,
I think that was Paul here. I'm here.
thank you. Pat,
I'm hearing on behalf of what.
Here.
being said.
Pat, okay.
I'm here.
George,
I just think it holds a definite layer of accountability that we need throughout the district.
George is not here.
Okay. Charles,
Principals, because when we have those
Allison,
things, we need them to stay
uh,
fresh,
Philippe,
Here.
to stay updated on new laws.
Karen,
They're constantly changing.
Jerry.
Did you say Jerry?
Yes, Jerry's here.
Here, yes.
Danielle or Daniel?
Here.
Daniel, okay, sorry. Joan? Chuck? Stephen?
Yeah.
James?
Chuck is here. Leslie.
Chuck is here. James, Stephen's here. James? Tuffy? Jane Wellman? Stephen O'Neill? Ronald? Katerina? Darren? Anita?
Here.
James? Silva? Okay. That's it.
Okay, and Leslie, just so you know, going forward on the other votes, you don't need to call every name, just the only the full members, not the alternates, just
Okay.
a heads up. All right. Got that. So the first order is the meeting minutes of February 15th. No one has any corrections or modifications? Have a motion?
approve.
I do have one correction.
Sure.
Under the personnel updates, in paragraph 3, my name is not spelled correctly. It has an I in the middle of it, and that's not, and my last name doesn't have an I in the middle of it. If you go down to the third paragraph, the first couple of times it's right.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to approve with
Sorry
the
about that.
correction for Pat's name.
Second.
Motion made by seconded by Chris and or Phil. Leslie, can I have the vote, please?
Yeah, Chris,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
Philippe,
Yes.
Jerry,
Aye.
Daniel,
Aye.
Chuck,
Yes.
Stephen,
Aye.
Anita.
Aye.
Great. All right. Next, we're moving on to the financial report and warrant. Not really sure who's presenting this, to be honest.
If you want, Andrew,
I'll bring it up. Hold on a second.
Sure, Jerry, by all means.
Can you see that?
You can.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, everybody did receive a revised, financial report in warrant this afternoon. So if you had a chance to look at, the previous one, there were no changes to the cash balances, on the first portion of the, financial report. And we're still reporting the $1,215,877. There were no changes to the Mass Dot projected receivables, again, bringing us to $1,314,598. Where we did make a revision was to the checks presented for signature. We had noticed they hadn't been updated from the prior month, so there were two separate batches of checks that were presented to me to sign. So we did make the revision to that. Reviewed the anticipated invoices. They seem to be current. So we're looking at a total warrant with anticipated payroll and taxes, I'm sorry, of $230,001, bringing net cash to $1,084,597. And then with the outstanding obligations, the total net cash is at $903,963. So that was the last minute revision, was the warrant itself based on the checks that were presented for signature in the month of March. Any questions on that at all? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Jerry, I think you have a new job.
Yeah, doing good.
As long as you double my salary, I'm getting one now.
Don't get any ideas.
I'll
Jerry,
make a-
you're getting paid to be on NMCOG?
That's what I was just thinking. They call it a stipend. Double nothing.
All right, so we'll double
Yeah,
your
just-
stipend.
Yeah,
A
I hear you.
stipend.
All right, well, outside of the outrageous compensation for performing, Jerry, any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the warrant.
Motion made by Pat. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Chris. Leslie, can I have a vote, please?
Chris,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
Yes.
Jerry,
Aye.
Daniel,
Aye.
Chuck,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Anita.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to Greater Lowell CEDS Annual Performance Report for presentation and vote.
Yes, I am gonna hand this over to Chris Hayes, who is right there. Chris, are you, Chris, you want me, what would you like me to do? I see you're on the move.
I thought this was later in the agenda. I will be not on the move in about 3 minutes. I don't know if there's a possibility to take it out of order, or else I can just verbally go through it if you go through the PowerPoint. It's up to
We can take something out of order.
Why don't we take it out of order would be my recommendation.
Although I am enjoying the Man About Town.
Yeah,
presentation.
I say make them sweat, make them sweat.
Meeting to meeting. How about we do the director's report, and then when we're done with that.
Sounds good.
Hey, Chris, we'll see you when you're settled down for the presentation. Okay. Hold on. All right. So Andrew, cool.
Yeah, please.
Ready? Great. Okay, so this is the report from February, and really kind of there's not a lot of news to report, mostly some reminders. The first reminder is actually that one is there is an NPO meeting next Wednesday, and actually Justin just shared the agenda and all of the related documents for that. There are some interesting things happening at that next meeting, including the documents that were shared, which is a tip scenarios, tip scoring, looking at the Title VI report, among other documents that are available on our website and will be discussed next week. So that's just something to keep in mind. The other thing is, again, another reminder, next Wednesday night, we have the regional forum for the transportation plan, the long range plan, and I do hope that many of you will be there, not just those who participate in the NPO, but everybody, because this is the plan really helps to set the stage for what we want to fund in the future for transportation, including the studies that we do. So it's really important, and we know that transportation is really important to a lot of your communities based on meetings that the transportation team has been having in each community. So your participation and voice in helping us to figure out the priorities in the plan is really important. I mentioned the tip, I mentioned the Title VI. I want to, I think I mentioned this last time, but we're still working on that RFP, and we hope that everything will be finalized sometime next month. We also have learned of various potential providers of that service, so it seems like there's a little more hope because other agencies have worked with, basically engineering type firms who provide traffic counting services. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to solve that issue. Weights and measures, Mark Normandin has been very busy, has by himself, working on weights and measures, and we are in the midst of starting interviews for the part-time sealer job. So also feeling like that's on a good trajectory to be more fully staffed. Didn't note it here, but Pepperell has expressed interest in joining the program, but I have not worked out the details of that, nor have I determined whether or not we have the right capacity to assist Pepperell, because I don't know how many pieces of equipment require our, review and sealing, essentially. You're about to hear about the SED, so I'm going to let Chris talk about that, but, we have a really excellent document to review. It's been recommended by the committee for your endorsement. And I'm really looking forward to a lot of the elements to advance in that annual plan. We are still working on getting together the proposal, and I have sort of an initial sketch out of the application process for the regional digital equity planning program. And Chris Hayes is working with staff from the city of Lowell on this process. The city will ultimately be the lead applicant to submit that application through the Massachusetts Broadband Institute. Daniela Garcia Moreno has been doing a lot of work on the stormwater initiatives, including organizing a meeting that's happening also next Wednesday. For some reason, next Wednesday is extremely popular in our office, and I don't know why. So yeah, this is not something that necessarily representatives from the council participate in, but the collaborative is very important to your DPW staff and engineers. So if you are so inclined to share this collaborative meeting with staff beyond, we share it with the collaborative members, that would be excellent, because Daniela has really organized an interesting program around green infrastructure and low impact development. We had an excellent workshop that Daniela put together for the regional clean energy. And that workshop, if you missed it, is posted on our YouTube channel. It's readily available right from the homepage on NMCOG. So I would encourage you to take a look, where we learned about the MAPC playbook, which a lot of your communities have been using in order to develop net zero action plans. And we also heard from staff with the town of Arlington about their net zero planning process. There's also a meeting coming up in Pepperell, actually tomorrow night at 7 p.m. in the senior center to help them initiate some of their clean energy planning activities, including a net zero plan, both for municipal operations and a broader community-wide plan. This is a little bit different. You all are familiar with the fact that we receive MEPA filings, or the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act. There's a requirement for filing. We've handled this differently in the past, and moving forward, we will be ranking the filings that we do receive and tracking them a little bit differently as well internally. And when relevant, we will let you know what we think merits a comment by the agency, which includes the council, of course. We are aware of 2 projects that are happening. One of them I mentioned actually at our last meeting, so I won't talk about that because the determination was for a secretary's certificate. So that basically takes care of that project. But the other one is a final EIR for a development in Chelmsford. But based upon a review of that internally, we've determined that no comments would be required, because it is something that we will, of course, track, but not necessarily provide any assistance directly on, or commentary. It's also the final step in the process, so we didn't feel that that was necessary at this juncture. MBTA communities work, still a little bit of a lull in our work there because some of the action plans have still not been approved. But I did want to mention that this morning, the Massachusetts Attorney General's office issued an advisory noting that all communities must comply with the law, and that it is not an optional law, and that it would go beyond a penalty of not having access to funding to not comply with the law. And I'll be glad to forward that advisory to the full council just for your information. I didn't have that in time for preparing for this report, but I think that it'll be important as we move forward and have to review things much more specifically around zoning amendments, because I'm sure that there will be more conversation about whether or not communities need to comply. And according to the Attorney General's office, indeed you do. I don't have a lot of update. We do have a Tewksbury housing workshop tomorrow night as well, which Chris Hayes will be attending and working with their staff on facilitating a session to get input on the vision and goals that we've produced for the housing plan. And we're hoping that the plan itself will wrap up over the next couple of months. Also, a few staff attended a March 11th, this past Saturday, a workshop in Drake-It, which had about 25 people in attendance to review different inclusionary zoning scenarios. And we had some good feedback on the outcome of that workshop. Skipping ahead, the CEO group, which is basically the managers and administrators, have continued to meet. We heard from Community Teamwork and Southern Middlesex Opportunities Council. Those are both community action agencies helping to address issues of homelessness and people who are unhoused. So we learned more about the services that they've been providing, the housing that is critically needed, and had a lot of follow-up and interesting discussion around that meeting. We have now pivoted to talking about opportunities for regional collaboration and cooperation. And I have probably one of the longest lists I've ever seen of possible ways that your communities could work together, which extend very far beyond an emergency call center. So there's some interesting possibilities moving forward on regional collaboration. The last thing is that obviously last month you approved the strategic planning process in the committee, but I'm still looking for one more member of the council to serve on the committee. And so if you don't have to tell me tonight, but if you are interested, please feel free to reach out directly to me so that we can get that committee started and moving forward. And that was it.
Any questions for Jenny?
Yeah, I just have one, Jenny, you mentioned Pepperell and the weights and measures. What constitutes whether a particular town is a good candidate for this program or they need assistance? You mentioned equipment, so forth. So I'm just wondering in terms of Pepperell's situation.
Oh, yeah. The key issue is how many pieces of equipment we would need to inspect. And it depends on how many businesses that you have in your community, basically, and how much growth is anticipated in business. That has an impact on our staffing and capacity. And also how much you're charging, the fees that you're charging for that, basically to the businesses for us to perform that inspection, because that all relates back to how much we can charge in our contract with the town. So I was saying that I don't know what Pepperell has, but that's something that typically we start with. So for example, when Westford came to us and said, we really want you to help with this, the first question we asked was, send us a list of all of your businesses and all of the equipment that requires inspection. And there's somebody who's in town hall who will know the answer to that information and can readily provide it, and then we can evaluate that to make a determination.
So you're working through the town administrator, I assume, to start with?
Yeah, that request came from the town administrator.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're
Anita
welcome.
has a question. Oops, sorry, Steve, were you all set?
Yeah, I'm all set, thank you.
I just had a comment back to the digital equity
Oh, yeah.
application. So select board met last night and we approved the letter to be part
Oh,
of that.
great.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
Very
Jerry.
fast. Very-
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Jenny, just a question for you. I noticed in your report, and I'm part of the committee in Lowell, working on a Lowell housing production plan, and reaching out to the affordable housing nonprofits, and several administrative people in, let's say, CTI, have serving on several boards in the city of Lowell towards the master plan and the housing production plan. Have the nonprofits been asked, or have they asked to be at the table and have they participated in the other surrounding communities that, say, CTI serves? Have they been an active member of their housing production plans from at least from the experience with NMCOG?
No, that's a really good question. I think in Lowell, they are being asked, and then they're also, advocating to be at the table. I think it's
Right.
both, depending upon what we're talking about. We intentionally created this subcommittee, if you will. Chris and I reviewing it together and with city staff. So that's how that came to be. I guess in my experience with NMCOG so far, that I haven't seen CTI as necessarily being on like an affordable housing committee. Most of our communities have already like a committee, and we use that committee as like usually like the work of the plan goes through that committee basically, and then it's like recommended to a board. I guess Lowell maybe doesn't have that set up, so we kind of set up that structure in Lowell. So in other words, like it's a town committee, and it wouldn't necessarily have a member of CTI or some other nonprofit organization participating.
Right.
That said, it's not like they're not participating in the process though, Jerry. Like they'd still, definitely attend meetings, provide feedback, sometimes are part of like a focus group or something of that nature.
Okay, all right. No, I just wanted to, because, like I said, I think they probably have more of a say in the city than they probably should be more active in some of the communities surrounding Lowell, and probably some of the issues that Lowell's trying to deal with probably wouldn't be as exacerbated. But I just think they need to be at the table in the surrounding communities as well. And they need to be within their organization, very cognizant of that. But anyways, that's just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill, go ahead.
Yes, in regards to the meeting that was held in Drake on the 11th.
Yeah.
It was at the library, and as Jenny said, there was 24 people, maybe more, very well received by the community. I talked with a number of people afterwards, and they're anxious to see what the next one is going to be about. So kudos to all the staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. I think it was Chris, you and Daniela and Jeff Owen. Yes. Thank you all.
Anyone else? Oh, thanks everyone. That was great. Chris,
Just before splitting over to Chris, which I will bring up your presentation in a moment, just to say that we have a lot of active hiring going on. I'm sure you're obviously aware of that. We're hiring actively for the deputy director position, for a regional land use planner position, for a transportation mobility specialist position, and for a part-time sealer. So there's a lot of, we're still also looking for a senior planner, but have not been able to get that figured out just yet. So we're still filling positions, but the one that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of is we did hire a finance and benefits manager. That is the new title of the position of the person who is replacing Bert. So I'm very excited about that. Sarah Paz actually starts on Tuesday, and she'll be here for our next council meeting. And hopefully not here, by the way, hopefully at Church Street in Lowell. So you'll all be able to meet her. And I'm really, really excited. And as I've mentioned previously, really appreciate the work of the Personnel Committee in helping with all of this, all of the interviews. They're booked, by the way. Don't ask them to do anything else.
Good news.
Kudos.
Well, that's great that those are all moving along so well. So,
Yeah.
all right. Are we ready to move on to Chris if he's stationary to some degree or another?
I think,
Here we are.
Chris, you're ready.
Is he sitting on the hood of that car or is it now like, you know, until then?
I hope
No,
not.
I'm here in my home,
right.
ready and able.
Somewhat less exciting, but we're looking forward to it.
So everybody had received, Chris had sent an email separately last week, and then I sent it again with all of the package of materials, and that was like a longer document. But he's going to run through the sort of top level of all of this and what we were looking for as an endorsement of this. So I'll hand it over to Chris and thank him and also prior staff Jeff for all of their work on this document.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you to the NMCOG Council for the moment to talk about the annual SEDS report that we're seeking an endorsement for. I can go to the next slide. So just as perhaps a reminder, but we have a 5-year SEDS plan, a comprehensive economic development strategy plan, and then every year we do a report. And that document communicates changes to the Economic Development Administration, keeps us in good standing so the communities can still get EDA grants if they seek them. But more importantly, we're also using it as a document to help communities and regional partners to work together on economic development goals. The SEDS committee is a roughly 25-member committee. A couple of you, I believe, are on it. But they represent municipalities, nonprofits, agencies, private businesses, and they guide the SEDS process. And on March 2nd, the committee voted unanimously to recommend that the 2023 SEDS annual report be adopted by the council and filed with the Economic Development Administration. Next slide. I'm going to go through a few key findings really fast. The first one is housing. So this is a slide. It looks like a mess of lines, but the thick red line is the average Massachusetts wage adjusted for inflation over the last 5 years. And as you can see, that average wage kind of stagnated from 2020 to 2021, and then adjusted for inflation actually went down from 2021 to 2022. Meanwhile, all those other lines are the median housing costs of each of the NMCOG communities. And as you can see, they went up and they haven't gone down. They've stayed up. In the last 5 years, up to a 25% increase, between 15% and 25%, depending on, 30%, between 15 and 30%, depending on the community in the last 5 years. Whereas the income has only increased about 5% when adjusted for inflation. Next slide. And part of the reason why housing prices may have leveled off is because of the increase in the interest rates. But the reason why they're staying high is potentially because supply has been very limited since the pandemic. This is a graph of permitting. The kind of darkest is Greater Lowell. The light blue line is everything but the city of Lowell, and the kind of medium blue line is the city of Lowell. You can see the city of Lowell permitting activity has been very minimal since mid-2020. And even the other communities have leveled off. If you can see the graph to the left, you'll see that this really represents a shrinking in permitting activity over the last few years, which is fueling that, well, not fueling, but keeping that ability from the housing price to really go down that much. Next slide, please.
Chris, I'm sorry, just before you move on.
Oh, yes.
That big bolus in February to roughly June of 2020, how do you, does that represent a number of communities meeting their 10% affordable mark with large projects?
this isn't permitting of 10%, affordable units. This is permitting of all units, market rate or affordable. And that big bulge is mostly from the city of Lowell. I forget what project it was, but 2 relatively large apartment projects were permitted during that time. And that really was that bulge. Now, if you move to the left, you'll see bulges like that often because big projects were routinely permitted before that. Since then, we haven't seen too many large projects more than a few units each be permitted. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I'm just curious because it just seems like an outlier.
If you saw at the left, it wouldn't be an outlier. You'd see bulges like that every time a 50-unit, 100-unit apartment building got permitted.
Okay, cool, thanks.
This slide also tells maybe the other piece of the story, and that is the change of number of employees that work in Greater Lowell. All the boroughs are about the same, so you don't need to really pay too much attention to which one's the city and which one's Greater Lowell, etc. Point being that we have not reached that 0%, so we have not reached where the number of employees that are working in Greater Lowell firms in 2019. So fewer people are working in Greater Lowell now, about 4% less, 2 to 4% less than in 2019 before the pandemic. And that's a result of potentially 2 major things. One is a very constrained labor supply. The labor force has not recovered. We don't have as many people looking for jobs. And also potentially the business just hasn't returned yet, especially in some of the sectors, which will be on the next slide, I think. Yes. So there's a lot of numbers here, but what I'd really draw your attention to are the middle column that says employment, and it's got some bunch of red numbers. That's the dip in employment since 2019. And you see big dips in the other services, the leisure and hospitality, and the information subsectors. So leisure and hospitality and other services are a lot of entry-level positions, a lot of those entry-level jobs, whereas information is the best paying sector in Greater Lowell. So it's a little alarming that those sectors really have not recovered. And again, that's partly because people aren't looking for those jobs, partly because of the business just isn't as good. Next slide. This is how it all comes together. Last year in the 1-year American Community Survey estimate, it was the first time in a long time that we saw population decline. Population decline in Massachusetts, in the city of Lowell, and in Middlesex County. We don't have it town by town because 1 year doesn't go town by town. But by all estimates, we've lost a population in the last year. Unlike the United States, which has continued growing, albeit slowly. And that's a factor, a couple of factors are going into that, we believe. One of them is that there is decreased international migration. A lot of international migrants came to Massachusetts and to our region. That has slowed down since the pandemic, whereas just as many people are leaving Massachusetts for either New Hampshire or even to the south. And then we did see an increase, unfortunately, mortality rates, and that has caught up with us in terms of population loss as well, unfortunately. Next slide. So all the shocks, we're talking about inflation, supply chain disruptions, the interest rate hikes, the jump in housing prices because of constrained supply. Also, what I didn't mention was, of course, climate change has continued, and we're seeing an increased or continued need for sustainability and resilience. We've seen an increased impact on PFAS in water supplies in multiple of our communities, and constrained water and wastewater infrastructure in multiple of our communities. A need for broadband access that's been really shown by the pandemic, and a switch to, I mean, look at what we're doing right now, right? Everybody's doing it. But there's inequitable access to those services. And then finally, we also get layoffs from the state. The ones that were large enough to be reported were 64 by Peloton and 32 by Starry Inc., which is an internet service provider in Lowell. Next slide. But it's not all bad news. So we're seeing increased education rates year after year. and that the region is more highly educated than the US as a whole. And both the city of Lowell and the towns outside of Lowell are continuing to become more educated. But there are pockets of different populations that we need to take special care to pay attention to. We're also seeing a lot of new business formation. Small businesses and micro businesses, i.e. single proprietors, are continuing to positively trend post-pandemic. And then interestingly enough, in the last 5-year American Community Survey, it was the first time in a long time that the population aged 19 and below actually grew in our region. That was almost entirely concentrated in Lowell. And it's still shrinking as a proportion, but it grew in absolute terms.
You're all welcome.
So this is kind of meat of what we're talking about. It's the schedule of goals. It's what we're all deciding and what you are deciding as adopting this plan as what the priorities for economic development in 2023. And I'm going to go over them really quickly, but I hope you had a chance to kind of absorb a little bit of them before this meeting in the larger document. And so they're broken down into 22 activities or projects. The first one is planning for housing at local and regional levels. So the big idea there is completing the regional housing strategy plan, which NMCOG is applying for funding at multiple sources and believes that's going to be a large 1-year project that does a lot of storytelling, arts, and assistance to communities in terms of education, so that not only do they have recommendations, but also they have the political backing to pass those housing regulations as needed in each of the communities. Unique to each community, of course. Number 2 is a supportive housing with wraparound services activity. That's to develop a phase plan for 300 supportive housing units. Those are supportive units for people who are unhoused or maybe housing insecure that need special help in housing units. That are at the very lowest end of the income spectrum. And we have a goal of beginning at least one new project for that by the end of the year. Knowing that that's a multi-year project to build those. Third one's MBTA community multifamily compliance. I don't think I need to talk about that. I think everybody's familiar with it. Number 4, but obviously it's a priority. Number 4 is local and regional water and wastewater infrastructure. So multiple communities are applying for funding to expand infrastructure. We also are recommending creating a PFAS task force in that stormwater committee. And then also undertaking a needs study to better understand and make recommendations and advocate for funding for improving the Greater Lowell regional wastewater utility and wastewater treatment in the individual other municipalities. Number 5, regional energy and sustainability planning and coordination. We realize that really bubbles to the top. The big idea there is to develop a regional sustainability collaborative, kind of like the stormwater collaborative, that assists communities with sustainability efforts. Next slide. 6, enhanced regional transportation planning. The big idea there is completing the regional transportation plan, Envision 2050, and implementing the Safe Streets and Routes for All grant. Those are going to be huge projects for NMCOG and for the municipalities, and we really want to make sure to do it right and make sure that we've got a lot of actionable implementation steps that will increase safety and economic development. We also have number 7, transit and alternative transportation connections. We've heard loud and clear that transit is not meeting the needs of the community, and that alternative transportation, which really means walking and bicycling for the most part, but also Uber and Lyft, a lot of other ideas, and that we need to take a better, closer look at those. So we've got a number of recommendations related to getting some scoping together for those to understand what we need to take ourselves to the next level, and also we believe that advocating for the Capital Corridor rail connection up through New Hampshire is a priority, that we want to make sure that the state knows that this is a priority for our region. Number 8, continued focus on transportation safety and state of good repair. Basically a list of major regional projects that we will be advancing, including the Rock Bridge, which is multiple communities are very interested in that, I know. Regional partnerships for workforce recruitment, retention, and development. That's really working together with a lot of different agencies. And what NMCOG is doing specifically is going to be completing a scope and seeking funding for a holistic study that combines housing, workforce, and other factors to understand how we can better recruit and retain labor force. As you remembered in those slides, our labor force has not recovered since the pandemic, And unless we do something, it probably won't naturally. So how can we come together to make sure that it does? Number 10, strengthen partnership for regional equity in health, food access, and economic outcomes. That's really a lot of working together and coalition building with different community-based organizations. And also on NMCOG side, making sure that we're doing the data to make sure that we understand what economic impacts are being proportionately or inequitably distributed amongst the population. Next slide. The next one is implement the economic recovery and resiliency plan phase 2 recommendations for healthcare specifically. We got a bunch of healthcare recommendations that are beefing up certain areas of healthcare or kind of writing down lessons learned so the next healthcare crisis that we are prepared for it. Number 12, strengthen childcare networks to support employment opportunities. So that's the big idea there is making sure we're looking at zoning in each of our communities, so all 9, to make sure that zoning and other policy allows for childcare facilities, because we can see that it's a bottleneck that's constraining the labor force, especially women in the workforce, and fathers too, honestly, and fathers. Number 13, a regional digital equity plan. We've talked a lot about that. That's a priority. Number 14, grant application and administration capacity building. NMCOG, I believe we've talked about this, but the state did give a grant to each of the regional planning agencies that's specifically for technical assistance for prioritizing projects, helping communities apply for funding, and helping administer grants. And so one priority is to make the best use of that one-time funding. Number 15, City of Lowell Master Plan. It's such a big project that made it to the list. I don't think any other communities right now are doing master planning, but they would probably be on the list too when they do get to it. Next slide. And we're almost through them. Last slide. But I hope you're finding this interesting and thrilling. Revitalization of regional network and village and neighborhood centers. So that's really a set of recommendations, making sure that we continue to keep a priority on our community centers, from Chelmsford Center to Graniteville to Cambodia Town to Railroad Square. We find that those are the heart and soul of a lot of the communities, and that we want to continue putting a priority on infrastructure and other programs and zoning to make sure that those stay vital. Evaluate improvement regional zoning and permitting practices. And that's the flip side. That's looking at community-wide. Multiple of your communities we know are prioritizing that, and we want to support that in terms of making sure that zoning is modernized and encourages the right type of development in the right places and removes barriers for that development. Industrial mixed use development is another basically list of different priority projects to help encourage private development in certain geographic areas that your communities identified to the SEDS committee. Enhanced coordination among businesses, small business assistance providers, and municipalities. A big idea right there is working with the different providers to make sure that we have a one-stop website. So if you're a small business, you can look at all of the assistance programs and all of the providers that are in the region, because there's a lot doing a lot of great work, but you kind of have to do some research. So putting it all together. Enhanced tourism and visitation. A few of you have been in the subcommittee that have been really working on what a scope of that will look at. And the big ideas there are studying and enhancing existing marketing. So each of the communities and agencies kind of does their own marketing. How can we support that? And also identify some regional cross-promotional themes. We're going to be looking for funding for a consultant study for that as well in the second half of 2023. Economic Development District application. We got good news from EDA. They're looking for updates to our application. Once we get those in, hopefully soon we'll be designated an economic development district, and that will open up year after year planning funding for NMCOG, for economic development. And then finally, there's a number of data requests from the SEDS committee that we will be doing over the course of 2023. So we'll be prepared not only for the 2024 SEDS report, but in 2025, we will need a new 5-year document, and we'll go through a big process to do that. So stay tuned for that. And I believe that's it. That's everything. And I'm ready for any questions or comments. What we'll be asking for is a endorsement of the annual report and the ability to send it to EDA.
That was really great, Chris. Questions for Chris?
Mr. Chair, can I say, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, I just want to say, I've been on these SEDS committees over the past, but I know Jerry Frechette has been too. We've been on this one, but I'll tell you, Chris did an inordinate amount of work putting this blueprint together for our communities, and I'm really excited about the data that's in there. I mean, it's an excellent blueprint for economic development trends and, goals and objectives for the future in the next upcoming year. But I mean, if you're looking for data about what's going on in your communities and in our area, I mean, it's filled with so much socioeconomic and housing data. If you really need that to help your arguments in cases of like particular strategies for your towns and communities, you should go to this document. I know it's part of the EDA requirement for us to get funding too, but I just want to say that I was really impressed by Chris's hard work, and I was also really moved by the idea we had more of a collaborative effort this time between all the different committee members, and also from all 9 communities. So I just wanted to say that up front. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Did I hear a voice just before Steve's? I don't know.
It's Jerry.
Oh, Jerry.
And then Chris.
Yeah,
Chris.
thank you. No, just to comment or build on what Steve said. So, I've been on NMCOG for about 14 years, and actually prior to being a counselor, I was asked as a banker to be on the SEDS committee. So that would going back some 15, 16 years ago. And I've been on the subsequent SEDS committees. And I think the final production of this plan really is probably the best product that I can recall that's been put out. And I think the other plans were really good plans, but I like the way this came about. I will say, Chris, I think you were able to breathe some new life into the process as well. So a lot of credit to you and the people that have been working on this. Obviously, Jeff was working on it earlier, but pleased with the plan. And it's critical. There's a lot for this to be successful. It's the communities that have to follow up on a lot of items that are in here as well and use it as a tool, as Steve was saying. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Jerry. Chris, go ahead.
So I actually wanted to provide context. It was funny seeing the layoffs. Well, not funny, but the layoffs in the Peloton, particularly because I had been following them since they were. It was interesting there that their business really boomed because of the pandemic, and it was sort of like once people started going back to the gym, they started to have a lot of problems there. And the other thing was that they had various different between lawsuits with safety issues, and there was just a lot of different things that went on along with their subscription service. But I actually had also too, I had applied for a job there at the Billerica location, and I ended up being, I think, denied for it. But at the end of the day, all the people I knew ended up getting laid off there, which was an unfortunate thing. But that's essentially how it was go. It just grew too fast. And it overestimated the amount of sales after the pandemic, and it just ended up burning. And that's why it had significant losses, and the stock has essentially tanked. But it was interesting to see that that it actually made it up onto the marks there. Again, I agree with the plan was really comprehensive. And I was impressed by it. I think that the challenges you're going to have obviously is getting. I mean, we have the MBTA communities, and there's at least some. You'll have kind of like there's there's a lot of sticks involved in getting that zoning approved. But outside of that, I think that zoning will be kind of a challenge, especially if it involves any type of traffic or anything like that. Like it's going to be a bit of a teeth puller, especially too with affordable housing, because it's good to see, it's 300 units of affordable housing, and at least one project and stuff like that, working with nonprofits. And I definitely 100% behind that. It just, I know that in actuality, that's going to be probably a lot harder to achieve than what is said, but looking to see little by little, we'll hopefully get some of that done. But yeah, it is we don't have and like I think Jerry brought up, we don't have, I feel we do have Habitat for Humanity, but I don't think we have think other than that, I don't see really any big nonprofits in Borica that work with affordable housing outside of that. But yeah, I just wanted to say good on your report there.
Thanks, Chris. Any other comments on the report? Oh, Anita, thanks.
Yeah, I thought this was also a very comprehensive plan. Chris, thanks for going over the presentation and rushing home to go through. And I felt bad. I felt like you were like rushing through this presentation too. There's just a lot of there to go over, I know. And I don't know if I just have not been familiar with said reports in the past and stuff, but I really appreciated how you were able to fold, and maybe this is just how it always is, and I just am paying attention this time, about how you're able to fold a lot of the pieces of the work plan or the plans for NMCOG in general into this comprehensive plan. So it's not a separate plan, it's not a separate thing that you're doing. So everything that we've been talking about this whole time is formalized into this annual report. So I really appreciated that. It is a ton of work. So there's like a little bit of a worry word in me of like, man, there's a lot of stuff coming down that everyone has plans for. I think they're really great plans. The one for the PFAS task force perked my interest because we just had a meeting yesterday, select board, with our water commissioners, and they're talking about raising the water rates 22% because of PFAS stuff. And we're like, can you like spread that out over a little bit? And they're talking about like a PFAS remediation fee possibly to introduce later on in a few years. And so, you know, that's a really huge spike in our water rates. So I know that there was some information on PFAS stuff in the news yesterday that about how it's going to go down to like untraceable levels, or so what that might mean for municipalities and you know, more costs and stuff like that. It will be something to watch for. But thanks for your presentation and all the work on this.
Just very quickly, it's a very long list, but it is not just all NMCOG, it's a lot of different agencies and people working on it, and a lot of the SEDS committee members, which I really have a lot of respect for.
Thank you. Any other comments for Chris? No, really great presentation, really good, excellent work. I think in the past, Chris, this was posted on NMCOG website. Is that correct?
At least the last, so this is the second year I've been working on it, and we did post the last year's.
So this, assuming this vote is positive, would that happen shortly?
Yes, we could definitely add that. We've been talking about how to make it the economic development page a little bit more easily accessible for that as well. But we'd definitely be posting that as soon as it's adopted.
Awesome, great. Any other comments before I call for the vote? Okay, can I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
To approve the SEDS document.
Motion made by second by Anita. Leslie?
Chris,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
I'm seeing Paul and
Aye.
and Pat, yeah.
Aye.
Philippe,
Yes.
Jerry,
Aye.
Daniel,
Aye.
Chuck,
Yes, aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
and Anita.
Aye.
Is it-
Jane
votes aye.
Jane,
Oh,
yeah,
Jane.
joined.
Oh, okay, Jane. Thank you.
I snuck in after my other meeting.
Okay.
You're always welcome. Thanks. All right. Moving on to community exchange. Anyone have anything to bring up? Oh, Phil, go ahead. You shaking me off? Do you want to throw a different pitch?
No, I believe everybody probably heard the news about the barn collapse at
Oh yeah.
Shaw Dairy. So I know that I just wanted to make everybody aware of it if they weren't. The community certainly rallied around the Shaw Farm to get him what he needed, and he's remaining open. In a lot of community, a lot of his animals went to other farmers, and they're doing well. So quite the shock though after a heavy storm like that.
I read that a beloved donkey was unharmed.
Yes, but he did lose 6 cows.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Any other perhaps more positive news, unfortunately?
Not in drinking.
Yeah, well, trying to be optimistic for you, Phil. Occasionally you've had something. Anything else from anyone? That's okay too. All right. Moving on to reminders and or announcements. Jenny, you want to touch on these? Or you want me to?
I have made the reminder many times now about the Envision 2050 meeting happening next Wednesday night from 6 to 7:30 at UMass Lowell. Glad to mention it again or answer any questions about it. Justin is also still here, so thanks to him and his team for helping to pull this all together.
And if you'd like to register for it, it's on our website, NMCOG.org/Envision 2050.
So we hope you attend. And the next council meeting is on April 19th. And I think most of you probably already know this, but we have, there's a very strong possibility that we'll be able to continue our hybrid meeting format, pending the outcome of, well, whether or not the changes that have been requested to the remote meeting rules will be accepted or acceptable. And that continues to move forward in the process and ultimately goes to the governor's desk. But a number of people who have been working on this are hopeful that things will proceed and we'll be able to continue meeting remotely after March 31st. But as you know, if we don't have those permissions, then we will need to be meeting in person at Church Street in April. I'll keep you notified. I'm sure you're getting notifications from your town council or special counsel or others. So, but I'll keep you in the loop as best as I can.
Thank you.
Any other
That was
business
it.
any other business we need to touch on before we close? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn then?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
Motion made by Jerry, second by Chris. I'm going to take it as unanimous. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
All right.
Have a good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.